Welcome grade 12s to the last segment of our Geography Paper 2. We'll be focusing on economic geography still, but particularly the secondary as well as the tertiary sector. Okay, now remember, always go to that exam guideline because it will stipulate the major things that you need to know, like the ones you see on this slide. Okay, secondary sector, what do we know about it? It's all about the manufacturing and the processing of raw materials into value-added products. So we are trying to increase the values of our raw materials so that when we export them, we get more in return. It is an important activity because it turns raw materials into usable goods and it increases the value of the raw material and it employs more than, well, not more, but it employs a lot of people in the economic sectors. So if we look here, the contribution to the GDP, lowest being primary, followed by secondary, and of course the highest being tertiary. It's very important because we earn foreign exchange from it. It provides more and higher paid employment than in the primary sector, and it develops more skills, which leads to the development of new technology, as well as our industrial growth, which stimulates the growth of services and facilities. Now, these are the major industries that we need to know. There are 7 of them. I'm just going to focus on these 2 first. Your light industries and your heavy industries. We already touched on them when we did our land use zones, so this should be revision for you. So for your light industry, we have your light Coca-Cola industry, and then your heavy, you can clearly see already over there, there's all of that smoke, all of that air pollution, aesthetically unpleasing to look at. So an example of a light industry would be your jewelry, clothes factory, food, beverages. Your location, you find them within the CBD or in that zone of decay known as the transitional zone or in that light industrial estate. In terms of raw materials, they use very small raw materials and those raw materials are sometimes partially processed. Land requirements, they don't really need much space. However, it also depends on that particular product. Infrastructure, existing road networks and power supply, they need to, of course, move the products they make. And then the environmental impact is little to none. Hence, it can be located close to where people are found. Your heavy industries, on the other hand, your examples are your iron and your steel power stations, motor vehicle factories. They're located on the outskirts, in the rural urban fringe, away from people. You will never find a high-income residential area close to a heavy industry. The raw materials they use are large, they are bulky, they are not processed, and they have major environmental and noise implications. If we look at the land requirements, they require large areas of flat land because the factories themselves, the industry themselves are very vast. They need major roads, railways, water and power supply because the magnitude of what they produce is large, or the raw material they need is large, so it needs proper transport routes. Environmental impact, air and noise pollution. Then we move over to the 5 remaining industries. The first one being your bridge industry. If you think about it, a bridge, you're moving from one point to another. So this is where it is located between the one point, which is the raw material, and the next point, which is the market. So these are usually also your break of bulk industries where you are changing the transportation. Maybe you're moving from a ship and you're changing it to a truck and you're also dividing that particular bulk load or commodity. An example would be an oil refinery. And then you have your raw material orientated industry. Raw material, meaning that it is close to the raw material. It's orientated its life around the raw material. So it's located close to the raw material, bulky and expensive to transport. For example, your iron and your steel. Now, very important, these are of course going to be associated with their IDZ that we're going to be looking at. Your Saldanha Bay. Your Saldanha focuses on your steel industry, engineering. Then we would go to our market-orientated, meaning that it's originating or surrounding itself around the market. It's located close to the market. It produces perishable goods, meaning goods that will rot very quickly if they're not consumed. Fresh produce such as your baked goods, your milk, etc. And then you have your footloose. Your footloose. I like to highlight the word loose because it means that it can be located anywhere. Like it can be, it's not, doesn't have to be located near the market. It doesn't have to be located near the raw material. It can be located anywhere. It's helped by the improved technology. Usually industries such as research, design, software companies. A lovely example which I found is Shein, which is the industry that sells clothes. It sells them all the way from China, but they reach all over the world. So it doesn't have to be close to the market. It doesn't have to be close to the raw material, and it will still succeed. Your ubiquitous industries, on the other hand, are also located anywhere and almost everywhere. However, they need to be close to their customer base because they rely on their market in order to succeed. But because they are more low order goods, you can find them in almost any town. Provide services 24 hours, 7 days, internet services, telecommunications, your MTNs and Vodacoms, you see those type of industries. So here we've got an example of an oil refinery and a bakery. So already I'm thinking here heavy industry, and I'm thinking here light industry. Okay. So 2.2.1. Which one is a break of bulk industry? Remember, break of bulk, we said, is where there's a change in transport and you're moving from a very, very large commodity load and you're trying to disperse it. And we said an example would be oil refinery. A large-scale mass production, large scale because of the vast size, would be oil refinery. Occupies a small area of land, that would be a bakery, because we said it can be located within a CBD or in a transition zone, and we know that there's very little space based on our urban profile. 2.2.4, located on the urban periphery, definitely the oil refinery because it needs to be away from people. Market orientated, it has to be the bakery because bread is a perishable good. It doesn't last too long. We like it fresh. Relies on road transport, both of them. Both of them rely on road transport. Oil refinery needs very well established infrastructure because of the large commodities it carries, but bakeries need to be transported on a daily basis, so they need proper road transport. Associated with low levels of pollution, bakery requires larger amounts of energy and water, oil refinery. Pretty straightforward. Okay, factors influencing the location of industrial development. So when an industry is about to be started, how do they know I must start it at this particular place? They have to look at the site factors or the pull factors. There has to be raw materials because an industry is all about changing a raw material into a value-added good. So it should be close to the raw materials. Market, there has to be a person who wants to purchase or buy that particular good that you're making. Consumers to buy the product, whether it is domestic, local, or international. If it's international, great, because that brings in more foreign income and adds to our GDP. Water, there needs to be water. Water for the processing of the manufacturing process, water for the employees who are going to be working there, needed for processing raw materials and for cooling the machinery. Transport, you need transport in order to disperse or disseminate your product that you're making to the market. Energy needs to be reliable, electricity for continuous production, because if you don't have a reliable energy source, your production will come to a halt and then you'll incur more expenses. Labor, we need both skilled and unskilled labor force, and then government policies, some subsidies, tax incentives to try and decrease the costs. Here are other factors that we've mentioned: market, water, communications, telecommunications, internet. You need that infrastructure, Wi-Fi, transport, level land, power. We've talked about raw materials and labor, skilled and unskilled. Then factors favoring industrial development in SA. We have a wide range of raw materials, well-developed infrastructure, cheap flat land, skilled and unskilled labor, and we have a domestic and international market. And we both have harbors as well as airports to transport our goods internationally. Factors restricting large distance between SA and foreign markets. If you think about it, this is the globe. South Africa is somewhere down here. Majority of the world is located in the northern hemisphere, and those are the people we need to trade with. So that is why we talk about the distance. Shortage of skilled labor, brain drain. Lots of people are leaving South Africa for better prospects in other countries, and that results in the shortage of the skilled labor. Lots of teachers who are losing jobs are going overseas to teach in China. Labor strikes. Labor strikes for better pay, higher pay, causes a halt in production. Water and electricity shortages, as well as air pollution. So now, how does it look like when we are dealing with map work? Labor. Okay, so this particular, okay, let's change my color because that red looks the same. Here we have buildings. The moment you see these big black blocks, you think of industries, factories. These are large buildings, and we notice that they are located where? On the periphery of series. In addition, what we can see is that there is a major railway line that is located close to this industry. There is a national route that is located close to this industry, meaning that there are proper infrastructure in order to transport the goods in and out. Okay, there is water sources, dams that are located close to this industry. And of course the land, if you look at the gradient, the contour lines are far apart, meaning the land is gentle and flat, making it a best position to have your heavy industry. So this is how you can integrate your map work into the theory. Then we have our industrial regions of South Africa. This year, we're not focusing on Durban, we're not focusing on PE, we're focusing on PWV in Gauteng, your Pretoria, Witwatersrand and Vereniging, and then we're also focusing on Southwestern Cape. What makes these industries successful or located where they are? There's a large market. There's a network of roads and railway lines. Plenty of labor, skilled and unskilled. It's close to Soweto, large population. Many different raw materials, enough water, cheap electricity, especially because it's close to Mpumalanga, where we have all of those coal mines that make our power. Main industries include chemical, iron and steel, motor vehicle factories, and machinery. When we come over to the Southwestern Cape, the historical lead, knowing that Jan van Riebeeck was the first to go there was a lot of infrastructural development, so there's a whole lot of infrastructure that's already put in place, hence transport network. Access to shipping port, there's a lot of maritime. You'll see where we look at Saldanha, there's a lot of maritime and shipbuilding happening there. Adequate labor force, raw materials, nuclear power station, which is located nearby, so alternative power source. Main industries incorporate wine, fruit, dried fruit, canned fruit, fishing and clothing, especially because of that Mediterranean climate that Cape Town, Western Cape has, because it gets its rainfall in winter. That's why we have a lot of these fruits flourishing. Okay, here is an industrial question on Western Cape. So it says, name the core industrial region located in the province depicted on the map. Southwestern Cape. You can clearly see Cape Town there, so ding ding, that should trigger that. Identify two industries from the infographic that are related to agriculture. And it says industries, it doesn't say types of products or anything. It says industries. So these are the industries over here. Fruit packing, winemaking, clothing factories, Kuberg power stations. These are products that are used or manufactured in the industries, so raw materials. So that's why we've got fruit packing, wine industry, and clothing factory. How does the harbor contribute to the development of the core industrial region mentioned in question 1.5.1? the harbor is essential because aside from airports, harbors and ports are the only way that we can have international trade. So it links us to the rest of the world. It allows for cheaper imports as well as exports, and increases the profits on our exports. It encourages investments in the area because if you have proper transport links and infrastructure, more people are prone to invest in that particular place. Explain how the lack of raw materials negatively impacted the industrial activities in the core industrial areas. If you do not have a raw material, you have nothing to manufacture. And if you have nothing to manufacture, you have nothing to export, meaning there will be less income and trade. So it increases costs as they have to get raw materials from other areas, limits the type of industries in the area, disrupts production due to delays of obtaining raw materials. A shortage of materials can limit production capacity of factories, leading to reduced outputs. The scarcity of raw materials may hinder the ability of Western Cape to diversify. Very important, you saw me highlight or underline two aspects. Why? Because the question is explain how, meaning we need a fact plus a qualifier. If you don't have that, you will forfeit those marks. So please explain how, explain why. We need a fact and a qualifier. Explain how the core industrial region mentioned in 1.5.1 positively impacted the economic development of Western Cape Province. So here, more job opportunities were created from industrial development. Increase in employment created a larger local market for goods. More money was generated in the region, which means more money was spent on local businesses. More investments from outside the region is an economic injection. Western Cape Province has more money to improve infrastructure and services. And then when raw materials are scarce, the prices often rise due to supply and demand. So you can't just say improves infrastructure. You will not get the mark, learners. Ensure that you explain how. Fact plus qualifier. Okay, tertiary sector. This, of course, has to deal with the trading of goods and services. So we have our international trade, which is the exchange of goods and services between countries. You can see all those going there. And then we have our imports, which are the ones coming into our country. And then we have our exports, which are the goods which are shipped away. We always want to export more than we import because that will mean we have a positive trade balance and we are making more money. Okay. So strategies for industrial development. How can we ensure as a country that we maintain sustainable economic development? We came up with these concepts. Good Hope, RDP, GEAR, those were all the ones which were directly after apartheid era. And then we're focusing now on these aspects which we're going to go into, your industrial development zones. I thought that was a highlighter. Your industrial development zones, as well as your spatial development initiatives, okay? So these are the ones which we are currently focusing on to ensure sustainable economic development. The West Coast SDI, which is a spatial development initiative. What is a spatial development initiative? It is an initiative plan to promote growth in an underdeveloped area that has potential to grow. So you have to have some form of pull factor or potential to show economic growth for you to be identified as an SDI. You know the term spatial from your GIS. Spatial is any geographical feature which you can assign a coordinate to and it occupies space. So that's why we tend to find that our SDIs are located over a large area because it's a spatial feature which covers a very large region. We want a development that is going to extend along that particular region. What are the main economic activities? We have agriculture, fishing, aquaculture, tourism, manufacturing, and mining. Where is it located? It's located in 40 kilometers north of Cape Town, and 5 kilometers east of Vredendal, in the port of Saldanha, which is well located in a deep water port, very good for trade, cargo facilities, handle exports and imports. It exports iron ore and it imports 7 million tons of crude oil. There are key development areas. We have the Vredenburg-Saldanha Regional Development Corridor, N7 Transport Corridor, and the North Rural Development Corridor. So these corridors are those main transport links that allow the movement of your trade commodities, your imports and exports. So that's what we call a corridor. Just like a corridor in your school or in your hall is the passage which you use to move from one class to another. Similar concept. Advantages. So when you have an SDI, what are the advantages for the local people? The first thing that I can think of is employment opportunities. They're going to have chance to get jobs. That is a social factor. Increased earnings, better paying jobs, which is going to reduce poverty, improve their standard of living. Better services and higher standard of living. You're going to get better water, better electricity, better services. Entrepreneurs in the informal and formal sectors, the SDI will increase productivity and wealth in the people. So what is the advantage? So that was advantages. So these were more of our social advantages because they're looking at the well-being of the people and how it improves their lives and their standards. Now, how does it advantageous for SA's economy? So now we're looking at monetary value. It improves the links of the Northern Cape and Windhoek and better access to resources which will then be used to manufacture and make more revenue. Development of new and existing infrastructure, access to different markets, internationally, domestic, local, promotes domestic and international trade, efficient transport networks which will attract more investors, more foreign income, good port facilities with international links, and employment opportunities again. Employment opportunities is what we call a socio-economic factor. It fits both in the social as well as in the economic. Sustainable water and domestic and industrial use for farming. Okay, then we move over to our Saldanha Bay IDZ. Okay, if you're looking at this page, it could be an overload of information. So what I did is I tried to break it up into segments. So in the first one, we are looking at what exactly is an IDZ. An IDZ is a purpose-built industrial estate to support exports. That's the main core deal of an IDZ. You've heard me mention it, sustainable economic development. We want to ensure generational wealth and growth in this particular place by establishing an IDZ. And the main core focus is all about exports, because the more you export, the more money comes into your country and you have a positive trade balance. They are generally located around transport routes that have international links. So that would be your harbors, your ports, and your airports. What is the main goal of a Saldanha Bay IDZ? It is to promote growth in areas that are underdeveloped, similar to your SDI, but have economic potential. So it's creation of new jobs, improved infrastructure to attract foreign investors. That's like 6 marks already. To encourage increased foreign direct investments. To encourage and promote international competitiveness. If there's international competitiveness, there'll be more production, there'll be better quality of products, there'll be higher income coming from it. To encourage manufacturing areas and use resources in those areas to produce goods instead of importing them. So we want to manufacture our raw materials so we export them and not have to buy them from China, Japan, and so forth at a higher price. Okay, where is the Saldanha Bay IDZ? The key term I'm looking for here is it's in the Western Cape province. Okay, gives you nice information about it being located close to Cape Town, 2 hours north. However, the main province I need you to keep in mind is that it's in the Western Cape. Always, when we do IDZs and SDI, we try to pair them together. So the SDI is your west coast, which is incorporating your Western Cape. So the IDZ that we do will also be within that region. Okay, what is the main economic activity of Saldanha Bay? Oil and gas, shipbuilding and repairs, renewable energy, and steel production. Okay, so these are the main industries that occur within the Saldanha Bay. I just want to highlight something. Okay, on this slide you'll see that they mention, we're going to get to it, but I'm just jumping ahead. 2.4.2, from the extract state two industries that the IDZ's port infrastructure supports. So there's maritime. That maritime links to the shipbuilding and repairs. Maritime has to do with shipbuilding and repairs. The energy, that energy links to your oil and gas as well as renewable energy. There's turbines and there's solar energy located there. The engineering is linked to your steel production. And of course, the logistics has to do with the transportation of all of these commodities up and down. And then we go to the factors favoring the location of the Saldanha Bay IDZ. There is a deep port of the Saldanha Bay, and it is ideally geographically positioned as a linkage between both sub-Saharan Africa and the international markets. So because of this port, it gives us access to international markets, foreign income, foreign currency, foreign exchange. Existing relationships with neighboring African countries and memberships to development association seats. South Africa-based companies favorably granting key access to opportunities for further collaboration. So working together in order to ensure more economic growth. Home to boundless opportunities as there is oil, gas, and marine repair services. So those, it's looking at the resources that it has. Good supply of labor. There's a lot of population in the Western Cape. Both skilled and unskilled labor will be available. Sufficient land available, particularly for expansion and growth. Sufficient energy supply through the renewable energy that they're producing themselves. And don't forget, there is a nuclear plant, which is not too far. Good transport links in the Southwestern Cape Industrial Region. We talked about the corridors. There's the N7, there's the railway, there's the airport, there's the port. So we have good transport links. Then, when we look at the economic impact, economic development, please ensure you always add the term sustainable economic development, because we don't just want an industry that's opened in 2024 and by 2027 it's already stopped. It's all about generational economic development. Industries are located closer to resources and raw materials. So that is, of course, going to decrease your transport costs and you're going to make more profits. It allows people to move around, create more access to jobs. Labor mobility is freed up. Focusing on skilling and reskilling people through education and training programs. And then your social impacts, greater income for the local communities. Money generated is used to develop the community. So they're going to improve the roads. They're going to improve the buildings. They're going to improve the service provision. Better standards of living and local community. Here are other socio-economic impacts I thought of. Creates employment, earning potential increases, buying power of the locals increasing, meaning more revenue for people who own shops. Poverty is reduced, better services, standing of living improves, better infrastructure, skills uplifted, entrepreneurial development, as well as it reduces your rural-urban migration, decreasing those problems of rural depopulation as well as urbanization. Okay, and then these are just the last example of questions that are based on the Saldanha Bay Industrial Development. I'll try and attach a link to these slides so that you can go through them yourselves. Then the last section that we're doing is the informal sector. The informal sector, please grade 12s, I plead with you, stop confusing the informal sector with the informal settlement. Those are two different concepts. An informal sector is a sector that is unregulated and has unregistered businesses that do not pay tax. Okay, so if we check concept of informal sector, what is it exactly? People are not employed by the formal sector, and it's not registered and it doesn't pay tax. What are the characteristics? People are self-employed, semi-skilled or unskilled, they lack qualifications, some of them, little capital is required, and it is there's no job security, there's no contribution to the GDP. The only way they contribute is via when they purchase their goods at formal industries, they pay VAT. Then, reasons for the development: because of job losses or retrenchments in the formal sector. Mechanization caused people to lose their jobs, so they need an additional income. Lack of formal qualifications, immigrants who cannot find legal employment because they possibly are not legally documented. What is the importance? We need this informal sector. Why? Because it provides an income for many people, meaning that it alleviates them from poverty. It decreases unemployment, and a decrease in unemployment will also link to a decrease in crime. Lower prices for goods, people develop entrepreneurial skills, and it reduces crime. What are the problems or challenges for the people in the sector? They are harassed by authorities because they're not registered, they don't have licenses to trade. No access to proper training facilities, exposed to the weather, harsh weathers. They do not get bank loans, they have an unreliable income, and they do not have the skills and education to enter the formal economy. How can this sector be improved? Provide specific trading for them, create shelters, infrastructure for them to trade, provide infrastructure, there it is. Allow them to access bank loans, regulate the sector, document who is doing what, regulated, partnerships between private and informal sectors, give them learnership programs, skills training, provide storage facilities. Never say they should register their business, because the moment you're telling them to register their business, it's no longer an informal sector. They are now moving into the formal sector. So ways to improve should not be to register or to go pay tax. That does not improve. You are now moving them away from the informal sector into the formal sector. So we're trying to find ways to improve while they are still within the informal sector. Okay. I think that is it from my side, grade 12s. All the best. Hopefully you do exceptionally well, both in paper 1 and in paper 2. Till next time. Thank you.